Yo, what's up everybody? Jumpin' here, and today I'm on some Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and I'm going to be showing you a really fun and awesome Graveborn Brr-Zerker build. And this build is just a blast to play, there's no doubt about it. It's extremely good, and the main thing is that it's really great at mobbing because it's a nuke build. That's what you do. You literally will nuke everything with your action skill, which is Dire Sacrifice. And because you are a Brr-Zerker as well, you actually can take advantage of some ice damage. So things like the liquid cooling, which is absolutely the best gun in the game, works really well in this build. But the main thing is that you can constantly spam your action skill and just mop up entire groups of enemies. It's a lot of fun. Now, the one problem I have with this game right now is actually the end game. Because the end game consists of the Chaos Chamber, and in the Chaos Chamber, the mobbing is just not that great. A lot of times, especially when you're playing solo, you will see like there's one enemy over here, okay, and then you run a little bit, okay, there's an enemy over here, take him out. So the gameplay I'm showing here is mainly just these obelisks because these are the best moments in the Chaos Chamber where you can actually see some mobbing. But also, I did want to show this where it's Chaos 20 and all the enemies are elite. So every counter here, they're elite and there's a ton of debuffs on. That way you can really get a sense of how this plays and how it works when you're doing the hardest content in the game. Now what's really great about this build, and it's another complaint I have about the game, is that they don't let us reset the main quest. There's no New Game Plus. Hopefully they will add that in. But if you could do that, this build is so much fun when you're running around on Chaos 20 and you're just going around killing the normal mobs. Like if you were just playing through the story again or something like that, man, you can just run in and just nuke everything and wipe everything out. It is just so much fun in that regard. But this isn't the best build in the world for taking out bosses, that's for sure. It's decent, but it's not the best. But the main thing is that it's super tanky. You're practically unkillable. You have a massive amount of health. If you actually look at my health, you can see I have a ton of health. And it is just insane on the survivability of the build. You have a ton of dark magic, so you always are getting your health back. The way that this build kind of works is that Dire Sacrifice is going to drain your health when you use it. But depending on how much health that you drain, you're going to do more damage with it. You can easily hit for over 100,000 with your Dire Sacrifice. The highest I've ever seen was 450,000, but it's pretty awesome. Alrighty guys, well that's going to pretty much do it for the gameplay. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into the build and I'm going to tell you everything that you're ever going to want to know. Alrighty, now I want to kind of explain Dire Sacrifice, and I'm going to also really talk about this one perk because it's really important and there's a lot to say about this. So Dire Sacrifice is going to do dark magic ability damage, but you will drain 40% of your current health to get a bonus 150% of whatever you drained, extra damage. Now that's really good if you have a larger health pool. So you want to have like a big health pool. The best way of doing that is actually getting unarmored defense from the Brr-Zerker. Now, this final perk here is really good for this build, but this is the main thing about the build that really will benefit Dire Sacrifice, is this perk. Now, this perk is interesting because you're going to reserve 50% of your current ward to get a bonus of 150% health of whatever you reserved. So what you want to do with this is you want to find yourself a turtle shield. Doesn't matter which one it is, but if you can get one that's volatile, and you can get one that has that 40% increased capacity for minus 10% health. Believe it or not, like minus 10% health does nothing for you. An example of that is whenever you're doing the Chaos Chamber, if you have this perk, the Unarmored Defense, and you find that debuff called Trust in Magic. Now what that does is that it gives you 100% more shields, but it will minus your health by like 50%. Normally that's not good for most of the builds in the game. If you have this perk, it's amazing because you end up getting so much more health. It's amazing the interaction. So what you're looking for with this is not maximum health increases. You're looking for shield capacity increases. That's why this shield is so good. And just a quick little PSA out there for any Spore Warden Brr-Zerker build out there. I played that build too. It's amazing. But if you're trying to like stay alive and be super tanky, find yourself a shield like this and use it, and you will never die. If you want to use the Cursed Whip for like bosses, go right for it. That's great. But when you're just running around in general, a big shield with all that health, you just never die. So I've done the testing, and the Cursed Whip with this build is good because whenever you lose the shield, you get that increased damage and you're always nearby the enemies. But from my testing, you're just better off using the bigger shield because it's way more consistent and you are so unkillable with the bigger shield. So I just wanted to point this out because like I said, you're going to get a bigger bonus from shield capacity, all because of this perk. That's what you're looking for mainly on your gear. If you want more health and you have this perk, try to get more shield capacity. It's amazing. But we do have this one perk. This is Ancient Fury. This is going to give you maximum health. But the main reason I'm using it is because of the area damage. The maximum health, and I'm serious, is like 500. If I got rid of this perk right now, I would lose 500 health. That's it. Same with this over here. This is Mortal Vessel. This is 15% maximum health. If I got rid of this, or, well, if I got this, it would give me 300 health. Very, very little. Same with Ascension. Ascension will give you stacks up to 10. You can get like 6% maximum health, so it's like 60% more. Guess what? With this, it's like 100 health per stack. I don't know why that is. It could just be the interactions with this perk is very strange. But I just wanted to talk about all of that because I feel like it's important to understand what's going on here and why this perk is so crazy with this build. Now, I will talk about the Brr-Zerker tree, but the first thing I guess I should mention is actually the way it works. If you don't know, whenever you use your action skill, you're going to become enraged, and you're going to be enraged all the time because you're always going to be able to do your action skill before 15 seconds is up. So you're pretty much enraged non-stop. Whenever you're enraged, the main thing you're going to get is bonus frost damage, 10%. If you can get your Brr-Zerker power up, you can boost that. So it's really nice. Unfortunately, with my build, I just can't do that right now. I wish I could, but I just can't. Now, I really like the liquid cooling. That gun is so good that it makes pretty much any build good, especially if you're using a Buffmeister. But the Brr-Zerker is one of the best secondary classes in the game because all the best weapons in this game are cryo. Even if you're using the purples, like a lot of the best purples are cryo weapons. So you want to get that extra frost damage. The health regeneration, this doubles while enraged. It's really nice, okay? Because you're constantly regenerating your health for all that annoying, like, minor damage over time that you're going to have on you. It really does not affect you that much because you're constantly regenning. Also, this perk over here, Dread Covenant, is amazing for just keeping you alive. You're going to redirect a lot of the damage to the companion. If you're going to die, it's going to sacrifice itself and you're going to get a bunch of health back. This is really, really good perk for keeping you alive. We're also going to go for Icebreaker. This is more damage versus frozen targets. And you also want the Old Ways. This is going to give you more damage versus enemies close to you. And also it's going to give you damage reduction for enemies close to you. We're always close to enemies because we're using Dire Sacrifice. Cold Snap, this is going to give you movement speed and frost efficiency. That's doubled when you're enraged. That's really nice. You already know this is like the best perk, honestly, for the entire build. I already talked about this. The area damage is really why I go for this, because Dire Sacrifice will do area damage. This is an awesome perk. Relentless Rage. This is going to save your life a lot, because whenever you're down, you stay down for a very, very long time with this. I love this perk. And finally, Blood of the Fallen. What this does is that it's going to allow you to restore a bunch of your action skill cooldown. So, like, let's say there's a bunch of enemies, you run in and you do Dire Sacrifice, and you kill them all. And by the way, Dire Sacrifice is super good. If you are playing on Chaos 20 and you're doing those elite encounters, most of the basic enemies now, yes, the badasses and some of the really strong troll enemies won't be one-shotted by it, but most enemies you encounter will just flat out die from this. So if you can just run in and kill a bunch of enemies, you are going to restore a ton of your cooldown, and you'll be able to probably use Dire Sacrifice again within 5 seconds. And if you only kill a couple enemies, just shoot a couple guys, and then you can pretty much use Dire Sacrifice within 5 seconds. So you can just spam Dire Sacrifice because of this perk. It's very, very, very good. Now when it comes to the Graveborn stuff, the main thing is essence drain. We want to get as much spell cooldown as possible if you're using a Buffmeister. And with my current setup, I'm able to use my Buffmeister, do my ability, and then I would say maybe about 5 or 6 seconds I don't have the Buffmeister active. That's pretty good. That's really good, to be honest. Now this is not a companion build, but I see no reason not to go for this because we're not going for Mortal Vessel. We're really skipping all this. You don't really need the health regen. And you could go for Harvest. This is a broken perk right now. If you go for this and then you go through loading screens, it's really broken. You can get your companions to hit for hundreds of thousands of dark magic damage. It's crazy. But I go for this just for the general damage. General damage is always nice for double dipping. And even though this is not a companion build, easily you can go ahead and run in, do Dire Sacrifice, kill a bunch of guys, and you can get 2-3 Hydras out. And then because we have our Demi Lynch as well, you have like 4 companions out, and that's 9% per companion. Definitely not bad, so that's why I go for that. And I already talked about this. It's very, very good for keeping you alive. Now let's talk about the hero points. The first thing I want to mention is try to get as much Graveborn power as possible for Dire Sacrifice. It's going to up the damage. So that's really, really important. Now outside of that, if you can get some Brr-Zerker power, it's very nice for that extra frost damage. So I wish I could, I just can't right now. I don't have a good mod, that's the problem. Now you want intelligence because you want spell cooldown because of the Buffmeister. You want Constitution because this is going to up your ward and your HP, and that's going to get you a lot more health. More health you have, the more damage you're going to do with Dire Sacrifice. And then finally, I threw the rest of the points into Attunement just for the skill cooldown. To be honest, because of the final perk in the Brr-Zerker tree, you really kind of don't need this. If you want to throw points into Strength for more crit damage, you can, but that's really just up to you. I decided to throw them in here because I do feel like it does make it more consistent to actually get my skill back quicker. Now let's go ahead and talk about the gear. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the gun. I'm using the liquid cooling, best gun in the entire game. I have the ×2 variant, the ×1 variant is fine. I wish I had a volatile one, but I don't. But this is so good that it will just out DPS anything. This is not a boss killing build, but you can easily deal with any boss with this build. It's not an issue. If you have this gun and a Buffmeister, and if you really want some extra damage, throw on the Cursed Wit, you will melt any boss. And it just doesn't matter what build you're using. That's how good this gun is. And you would think because of all of the dark magic bonuses that we have, a dark magic gun would be really good. And there are some that are really good with this build, but nothing is going to out DPS the liquid cooling. That's just the reality of it. Now the enchantment I have on this is Enchanted Graveborn, and with that you're going to get 50% more dark magic damage and 50% more dark magic efficiency for 10 seconds after using your action skill. So this is going to actually buff Dire Sacrifice by a lot. It's really nice. Now I'm a little conflicted because this gun is so good, you could go for instead while action skill is active, increase your frost damage by 50%. Now if you don't know about this, and if you're watching this way in the future, this might be patched, so be warned. But these right now are broken. So even though Dire Sacrifice is not an active action skill, it's like a trigger, so you use it, you're done. It doesn't matter because whenever you use any action skill, you're going to get the benefit of this for like an entire minute. That's really crazy. So the gun is so good, I'm kind of thinking maybe the frost damage would be better. But again, that's up to you because the only downside of this is that it's 10 seconds. That's the only downside. This is like an entire minute. So that's kind of the choice you need to make. Now on the shield though, this is definitely one you want to get. which is while action skill is active, increase elemental damage by 35%. This is going to benefit the frost damage and the dark magic damage. So it's very, very nice. I've already talked about the shield though. You know my opinion on it. Get the bigger capacity one. It's amazing for survivability, and it's also going to up your damage of Dire Sacrifice by a lot. The melee, 100% get the Goblin Pickaxe. This is going to, whenever you pick up gold, you're going to get movement speed, spell cooldown, and action skill cooldown. It's 6%, it only lasts for 5 seconds, but it stacks up to 5 times. Super, super nice, because we want that spell cooldown for the Buffmeister, and we definitely want that action skill cooldown for Dire Sacrifice. The melee itself, we don't really need to use it ever. But another thing too is that the enchantment I have on action skill start increased damage dealt by 20% for 20 seconds. That is always active, because we're always going to be able to do Dire Sacrifice every 20 seconds. And whenever you have general damage like that 20%, it's going to allow you to double dip in a lot of cases, and it's going to dramatically up your damage. Now, when it comes to the Buffmeister, I have a dark magic one. I really don't think it matters which one you have. If you have this whole convert the damage to dark magic, I really don't think it matters. If you don't have this though, I would probably try to get a dark magic one though. And this is a volatile one. I got really lucky with this. My friend got it, but he gave it to me. And it has a pretty good duration on it. It's 11.5. The cooldown is pretty long, but because we have so much spell cooldown on this build, we can keep this up most of the time. And there are going to be times where you won't have it, but for the most part, you're going to be able to keep this up a lot because of all the spell cooldown. The enchantment I have on this is while action skill is active, increase dark magic damage by 50%. So we have a lot of dark magic damage, but that's mainly for Dire Sacrifice. But I did want to talk about something when it comes to these Buffmeisters, something that some people might not know, and that is what it actually does. You need to look at what it says. This one says Pew and Ka-Chow. Now what Pew does, that's going to buff your guns. What Ka-Chow does, that's going to buff your abilities. And what Bonk does, if you see that, that's going to buff melee. And if you see Zap, that's going to buff your spell. So what you're looking for is Pew and Ka-Chow, because Pew and Ka-Chow is going to buff your gun and your Dire Sacrifice. And I can tell you that this 100% works, because whenever I don't have the Buffmeister active, if I do Dire Sacrifice, I'll hit for like 101,000. When I activate the Buffmeister and then do Dire Sacrifice, I will hit for 180,000. And if you can get more health, especially because of Trust in Magic, the debuff you can find in the Chaos Chamber, you can easily get up to like 30,000 health with that. That's when you'll start hitting for 250,000 or 300,000 with Dire Sacrifice. It is crazy. Now, let me go in to talk about the necklace. This is super good. You really want to try to get this, which is while health is full, healing from dark magic is going to increase your maximum health. This will give you like another 4,000 health. So right now, just chilling, I think I have like 16,300 health. And if I start shooting enemies and I'm doing all my dark magic stuff, I can get this up to 20,000 in no time. And just to show you, whenever I do Dire Sacrifice, I'm going to drain a bunch of health. But whatever I drain is added to the damage of Dire Sacrifice, and it's 150%. So it's super, super good. And this is kind of perfect because it has dark magic damage and Graveborn power. That's exactly what I want. The only thing I wish I could get, and I'm not complaining too much because status effect damage and dark magic efficiency is fine, but if I could get something like this, which is action skill cooldown and shield capacity, that would be a lot better. Shield capacity is always going to give you a ton of health, so that's what you want. And that's another thing about this mod. I was so happy about this mod when I got it, but I was happy because it gives me 42% maximum health. If that would have been 42% shield capacity, it would have been so much better. But the general damage on it, I really like that. The gun critical hit chance is fine. The main thing though is the convert. The convert is super good. You 100% want that if you can get it. And the Graveborn power is just amazing. When it's volatile, it's like almost 40%. Now this mod, I don't really mind it so much because I really do like what it buffs. It gives me more spell cooldown. That's what I want. Now, I do have this mod to kind of show you. This is a Graveborn Brr-Zerker mod, and all of the skills that it buffs really aren't beneficial, because I was already talking about this, and I don't know is it because of the one perk or not, but things like Mortal Vessel, it doesn't really give you a lot of health. Ascension, it doesn't give you a lot of health, and that's kind of the problem. But the Brr-Zerker power would be nice. That would add extra frost damage whenever you're in rage. So I would probably still use this if I had a really good one. I don't though. The main thing to me would be that convert damage. I really want that above everything else, and general damage. That's the other thing. Now let me talk about the rings. So the rings, I went for ability damage. You could probably go for gun damage if you really wanted to, because the gun is so strong. This is a god roll. Now, if this was a moon ring, I would be so happy, because the moon ring is the best ring in the game. But this will give me ability crit damage, action skill cooldown, and pistol crit damage. That's perfect for this build. And this one is whenever I deal damage to a boss, I will double the effects of everything on this ring for a moderate amount of time. Now, the moon ring is the best ring in the game because its effect is while ward is not full, you will double the effects. And that's super good. Now, this one is not the best. It has ability damage on it, and it also has pistol crit hit damage on it, but that's it. I could definitely get a better moon ring. Now, I've done a lot of testing with this moon ring, and I've determined two things. I'm going to quickly talk about them, because I've seen a lot of people talk about this. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I was pretty thorough with my testing, and the way I tested it, just to clarify, is I actually tested it with action skill duration. I have a moon ring that came with that. I actually have two of them. And what I did was I threw on two moon rings with action skill duration on it. And then I used Blizzard, which is the Spore Warden ability, which has a 16-second duration. I took a stopwatch and I timed it. And what I determined is that you can double stack moon rings. So you can actually have two moon rings on, and you will benefit from both. Because what I was able to determine was I was getting 48% more duration. And the moon ring I had 12%. Both of them had 12%. So it was doubling it and making it 48%. But the other thing I determined while testing this was, and I know I've seen a lot of people talk about this, I had to actually remove my shield. I had to just deplete it. Now, I don't know if you have to have no shield or if it just has to be depleted. But I've seen a lot of people say that this perk from the Brr-Zerker, which is so amazing, will keep it active all the time because you are reserving your shield and you will not ever have a full shield. That is not the case. When I was doing the testing, I was not doubling the effect. And until I took the shield down by shooting myself, that's when the effect was doubling with the moon ring. So I just wanted to point that out because I've seen a lot of people say that about this perk, and I just think that that's wrong. Maybe my testing wasn't 100%, but I'm pretty confident that I did it right. And you do have to lose some of your ward. You also have to have a shield on. That was the other thing I determined. You can't just remove your shield. You have to have a shield on to get this to work. Alrighty guys, well, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about the build. It is a lot of fun, there's no doubt about it. Dire Sacrifice is amazing. You will just nuke enemies, and it's just a blast to play. Literally, no pun intended. It is a blast to play. So 100% I recommend trying this out. I really do hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you have, will you please like it for me? Be sure to subscribe for future videos, and if you do subscribe, make sure to click the bell. That way you can stay notified. Thank you so much for watching, and I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day, and peace out.